Good evening, everybody. Hang on just a sec. Let me mute my speakers here. Here we go. All right. So hopefully no feedback. Good evening, everybody. Good morning. If it's your part of the world, wherever you're coming from, I'm so glad to be here tonight to join you all and to welcome Adele Ho to our to the Catch the Moon family, to this group. We're going to have an awesome interview with her and get her perspectives on things. I'm just like so excited about this. So wanted to give once again, we got delayed a little bit. I just wanted to give people a couple minutes to join the call if they were just having a little bit difficult time with the Zoom or whatever. But yeah, we're gonna get this thing rolling now, and I could not be more excited. I just want to give a little introduction to Adele. I'm just gonna go ahead and read her bio. Hope you don't mind, Adele. You can, by the way, I'm gonna find you right now, and I'm gonna unmute you so you can start to speak up anytime you wish. And hey, Adele, how's it going?
Hello.
So good.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an introduction here. So Adele's a music supervisor with Supergroup Sonic Branding Company and began her career in music supervision interning at Neophonic Music and Media before joining Creative Control Entertainment, where she worked on projects such as Dimitri Martin's Tribeca award-winning film Dean, Tyler Perry's Boo and Boo 2, a Medea Halloween, the 10th anniversary of the Guys' Choice, formerly known as Spike Guys' Choice Awards, featuring live performances by Andra Day, Robin Thicke, and John Legend, as well as working alongside award-winning choreographers Nappy Tabs. While at Creative Control, Adele took an active role in their event production division. She has worked as talent coordinator for the Guild of Music Supervisors Awards, the Consulate General of Canada in Los Angeles's Grammy Party, as well as Canadian Blast events in Los Angeles and Canada House at South by Southwest, working with artists such as the Arkells, the Strombellas, Borns, Megan Trainor, Aurora, Jacob Banks, and Kenny Loggins. Recent notable projects have been Warren G's G-Funk documentary on YouTube Premium, Tyler Perry's Acrimony on Lionsgate, 1999 Wish You Were Here, Telefilm Canada, and JT Leroy, Universal Pictures. Recently, Adele has joined the team at Supergroup Sonic Branding Company, Stockholm, Schitt's Creek, The Kindness of Strangers, Northern Rescue, and Born to be Blue. Welcome, Adele, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So exciting. So just a few questions here. So figure I'll ask you some questions, and then we're going to have a few questions from the group, and sure appreciate your time. I'll just jump straight in with it. So what's your day-to-day job like at Supergroup Sonic Branding Company?
There isn't like really a formula, to be honest. It's just, it varies on what is going on at the moment. So our company works in film, TV, ads, and branding. I'm strictly on the film and TV side. So the schedules just with film and TV obviously vary. So for example, this week I'm delivering on a film, Fast and Furiously. So getting that locked up, just like chasing after final credits and clearances are all locked up, but confirming things. I was in recording sessions all week. So it really varies on a day-to-day basis. So it just kind of depends on what we're working on at the moment.
That's amazing. It's got to make the job pretty interesting, right? To not have to do the same thing every day.
It's never dull, I'll tell you that. So yeah, and I actually enjoy clearances for the most part. So that's a big part of it obviously as well. So it's a nice balance. I like the balance between the administrative paperwork and research, but also with the creative. It's a good fit.
Awesome. Now, when you're talking about clearance, we have some folks who are relatively new to music licensing. What do you mean by clearance?
Forgive me if I'm explaining something that's already obvious to a lot of people, but just so every song has two sides. It has the master side, which is the recording, and then it has the publishing side, which is the composition of it. So it's essentially tracking down the rights holders, making sure we have 100% on both sides, and negotiating fees that work within my budget.
Awesome. Yeah. It's just Sounds like you have an awesome job. So how many shows are you placing music on in a given year at the company?
Right. So I just started with Supergroup, and we are actually a team of 6 people. So everyone is on, different projects, but at the same time, we're actually very collaborative. So even though I'm not working directly on one show, I'll kind of have an idea for the most part of what's going on, what they're currently looking for at that time. So it really varies. Like right now, there's a show that's in post that has not yet aired. And I'm not personally supervising that one, but I'm doing like consulting on it. So as a team, we have 1, 2, 3, offhand, I can think of 1, 2, 3, at least 6 shows.
Mm.
And I'm currently working on 3 films.
So it's just constantly going on. Would you say that there's
Yeah.
just a constant flow? You're constantly looking for music?
Always, yeah. And even like there are times when our music searches are a little bit quieter. So because like for example, the films that I'm currently working on, the music is very, very specific. So my needs are very different, that I'm not necessarily outsourcing to a lot of people. I kind of know where I need to go. But we get so much music that and we're always listening, essentially. We're always listening. Even though I may get something that may not apply to something that I actually need at the moment. And this goes for, I think, a lot of supervisors. We're mentally, making notes or filing things away. And it's, so that at one point we'll need it. Sometimes it's just simply, I really like this song and I would love to have the opportunity to place it. So we're always listening and, keeping an eye open on things.
Just out of curiosity, what's the longest time you've had a song kind of in your brain that you'd like to use it and still
I
haven't come
still
up?
have some. Yeah, I still have some. I mean, I've had songs. Once I was just discussing this recently. I was at a show with another supervisor, and a song started playing, and both of us were like, "Oh, I love this song." We've both pitched it for years, and it just hasn't yet stuck. And both of us had the same experience. So, I mean, I've been doing this coming on almost 5 years, and there are songs that I've yet to place in 5 years. So, but I'm still working on getting them there.
It's still stuck in your head, and you still
Absolutely.
so cool.
Yeah. And there's a couple supervisors that, we have actual kind of, competitions on, who can place it first. I mean, we don't have control, but we both want to, win that.
So in a way, like music supervisors are totally advocating for artists that they believe in and the music that they love.
Absolutely. I mean, most supervisors, I think, we really do love our job, and there are good days, bad days. It's not always as fun or glamorous by any means, but at the heart of it, we all love music, and I think that's the thing that drew us to it. I like to say, like, I love music. I just had no talent for creating it, and my talent was knowing that. So I, now get to do this side of it where I am able to be creative without actually making the music. But for most of the part, like, we obviously have our hands tied sometimes with whether it's budget constraints, whether it's politics, or, the song didn't have full clearance, whatever it may be. But for the most part, like, we may not always have the budget and resources available to, place things a certain way, but we always are at the heart of it. As much as we're trying to serve our production well, we really do also want to advocate for the value of music, and as well for the artist.
Incredible. That's so awesome. I mean, certainly feedback that we get from a lot of soups, and it's really
Mhm.
encouraging as us for us as like music creators to hear that in a way you're not unlike just everybody out there. You're fans of different types of music, and it's
Yeah.
really, really cool to hear that you're advocating for the stuff, and it totally makes sense that you would fight for the stuff that you really dig. Um,
Mhm.
so the next question I got for you is like, how often does your company use like songs with vocals versus songs with instrumentals? Would you say there's like you use more like instrumental cues, or what would you say
Uh,
to that?
Well, because I mean, because I work in film and television, often it is vocals, obviously, unless because we will be working with a composer for the score. I know on the ad side, there's a lot more space for just instrumental and trailers, obviously, as well. But for film and television, for the most part, it will be vocals, and then we'll defer to the composer for score. Sometimes it may be something like, quite well known, Cloud de Lune or something like that, that will then just, use the instrumental version only. But for the most part, it's vocals for film and television.
Yeah, totally cool to get that insight. We've got a bunch of students here at Catch the Moon, all eager to make music that companies like yours can use. What are the types of things that grab your attention about a song when you feel it's great for licensing for film and TV?
Yeah, so I mean, there is the obvious, depending on, my ear is probably going to be more prone to perk up based on what my music needs are, to be frank. So even if it's a music that I really, really like by artist I like, I'm less focused on that depending on if it doesn't serve my needs for my projects. But generally, if a song has good tempo, good builds, isn't too stagnant, has universal lyrics. Those are things that often will, get our attention, where because there's a lot more versatility of what we can do with those type of songs.
Sorry, just taking a note here.
Yeah, of course.
I like to take some cliff notes here and then pass them along to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so that makes sense. It totally makes sense in terms of like the types of things that you're generally looking for when you're listening to music. Is there anything you would say as far as like the production quality of music? Would you say that it's like, we hear this a lot from people, that it's pretty,
Mhm.
your ears just get so tuned to listening to professionally
Mhm.
produced music that if it's not really hitting the mark from a production
Yeah.
perspective, would you say that that's something that can kind of be like something that
Yeah.
makes it unusable?
Absolutely. And we very much are aware that there are costs to, create a product that sounds like that. But the issue on our end is we do need, when we pitch any music to production, the only time I'm ever really pitching demos, to be frank, is if it's a very well-known artist who, they can reference, and it's something that maybe it's something that is just new, something like that. I'll pitch a demo, because we also know that there are a lot of resources to make it happen quickly if we need it to happen, and there is, in terms of resources financially, studios, professionals. But when we pitch something to production, we need it to be essentially a final product. We need the quality to be high as well, because the turnover time is so quick on our end, and the music side is such a small part of the puzzle. It's a very important part, but it is one of many on productions. So things are moving quickly, and we don't really have a lot of time to go back and forth. We're also inundated with music. So in that sense, if something isn't maybe quite at the level we need it to be, we usually don't have the time to work on it. And then we also just have so many options at our disposal. So it's always very important, if you are pitching anything to a supervisor, unless you have a very close relationship, I would not suggest pitching anything beyond a final mastered, with high quality, production on it.
Yeah, so something that more or less sounds like radio ready. Um,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, well that's like good to know as well. It's certainly something that we talk a lot about in terms of like your production really has to hit a certain bar, or else it's just like you can kind of hear it.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like a little difficult to narrow exactly what it is about a recording, but you can kind of be like, it's not quite hitting the bar.
Yeah, and I mean, every supervisor obviously has a different style, and it's pretty subjective how music is, listened to, but a lot of it is general, and especially when it comes to the quality of it, because we're so inundated with music, we don't have a lot of time. So I would say the way that a lot of supervisors listen to music is essentially, think of like when you're channel surfing on TV. Like I personally, for the most part, will probably do about 20 seconds at the beginning, 20 seconds in the middle, 20 seconds at the end. And I've been told by other supervisors that that's generous in time. So
Probably agree
yeah,
with the supervisors I've talked to.
right. And like, and the thing is like, obviously something is really resonating, we'll give it more time, but just we're receiving so much and we're getting, you know, really a lot of pressure on our end to deliver stuff quickly. So that's why if it's not up at that quality, it can easily, we don't really have, unfortunately, the time to really give to it. Now, this is for me specifically. If I have a good relationship and a close working relationship with an artist, I'm more open to hearing maybe a demo. But even then, I just dealt with this on something recently where I did have a demo and it was great. And then I literally called the person and was like, I need you to, if, you know, to basically have this mastered and brought up to this level by tomorrow. If you can do it, then you know, it can be submitted. And if not, then, you know, keep it in mind for the future.
That's great. So you would say it's been my experience in the music industry that it's a lot of it's built on relationships and having
Mm-hmm.
good relationships with the people you work with. Would you say that like the relationships that you have in the industry are like it's just really important and trust and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Relationships, 100% down to it's, you know, the old cliche, it's every, you know, it's who you know, and not necessarily in a nepotist way, just in a sense of like the relationships, like where I am in my career is 100% because of my relationships. From what I gathered, you know, and was able to learn from people, but also just how I like how I got into the companies that I got into. It was really, you know, I was a bit, I met one person at actually the Guild conference is where I met Joel, and we chatted a little bit. He, you know, knew people that I already knew. So it's a small community, but the relationships are key. I mean, on my end, even now, the relationships I've been able to, you know, fast track certain things, or I've been able to get access to certain things based on relationships that, you know, I developed years ago on whether it's like the manager, whether it's a label or however, and the level of trust as well makes a huge difference because, you know, that sometimes with the way that our industry is, we work in an industry that there's a lot of things that are very unique. So if you have a positive relationship and one that you can trust the person you're working with, it really shows in the results. Yeah, and I remember this is an important kind of story someone had once told me is they had attended a conference once and were only focused on the people at the panel. And the person next to them was, you know, trying to chit chat and they were just kind of ignoring them. Come to find out, like a week later, they went for a job interview and the person who had been sitting next to them was the head of the company who was actually interviewing them. And this is very much an industry where, you know, who is going up on the way up can easily come down the next day and vice versa. So you don't necessarily know where people are going to be. And outside of just, I think, wanting to treat people how you want to be treated and being respectful, it's also very much an industry where people's positions of power can change either direction very quickly.
Yeah, and by the way, somebody commented in the chat that I'm laughing. I was laughing because it's so true that these things can happen. Like you never know who you're sitting next to. So
Yeah,
my general approach in life is you got to treat everybody well because you
100%.
never know who you're going to run into, or you know, and
Yeah,
like you know, you never know you're climbing the ladder, and then you know a few years later somebody you're climbing the ladder with like takes a huge leap, or maybe you take a leap, and it's and then these relationships that you build kind of on like a smaller level can be really important. And
yeah, absolutely. And you know, I mean, I think it's just in general, similar to you, it's not hard to be nice to people. And you know, the industry can be very cutthroat, but being nice goes also a long way.
yeah, I hear you there. I'm totally in agreement. What are some of the current trends in terms of the types of music that are hot for TV show placement right now and for films?
So, you know, with a lot of um, there's always a place kind of for, right now, I'd say anything Imagine Dragons-ish, that's still very much in demand, where it has a lot of builds. That's still very big. Mumble rap is still a big thing. I'd say hip hop, if anything, is just becoming bigger and bigger. So that's very popular. A lot of like female empowerment. So when you have people like, whether it's Casey Musgraves to Lizzo or whoever, that's a big one that is doing very well across all boards. And then the standards of anything, when I say, anything emotional, pulls on the heartstrings, there's a wide array where that can be placed as
And
well.
emotional pulls on the heartstring, are you talking about kind of slower, kind of just emotional kind of stuff?
Yeah, like, and the kind of palette that like Grey's Anatomy is, stuff like that, that works really well. So slightly indie, even though it's maybe slower, still has a good tempo that doesn't drag on. But anything love, something that's been coming up a lot with supervisors is anything love that is also platonic love, because that's very, like, romantic love is, always in demand, but the platonic love songs, then that can apply to family, to friendship, whatever. That is actually harder to find than you would think, but that's something that actually comes up a lot.
Oh, this is all really helpful insight. Thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah.
I guess the next question I would have is any tips you'd give artists and producers on making songs that are easier for you to use on a show? Is there anything you'd say that makes it like really difficult to use a song you'd otherwise want to use?
So on the lyric side, anything that's overly specific, there is sometimes that can work. Obviously, like, I was doing a film that was set in Atlanta, so that worked in our favor that the song had Atlanta in it, but that's very niche. So if it's too specific, that can make it a little bit difficult sometimes. Anything, if you're going to have samples, especially like this is for hip hop, make sure that they're clearable. Make sure that if you have samples in anything, actually, make sure that it's clearable, because basically making our job easy. And samples can get very tricky to clear, or it can also make it, impossible. Also, sometimes like a song will have an instrumental riff, as long as it's not distracting. Like, you can have a little bit of a riff, but anything overly where it's this like massive guitar solo, anything that essentially distracts is hard to place, because when you're thinking of music for film and television, it's supposed to, help tell the story and move picture, but it shouldn't really interfere with like dialogue or anything like that.
Oh, that totally makes sense. I heard once on a panel where they were talking about like they sometimes will create mixes without the tops on it. Sometimes is that something that you find is like is something that you request sometimes, where they take out like kind of this sibilant kind of percussive stuff sometimes to make it battle with dialogue or things like that?
It really depends, again, on what the need is. Sometimes, which is also why, and especially for, independent artists, this is really good to know, is that if you do have a song, if you have instrumentals available, because we will ask for them. And if we can, again, if the less back and forth we have, it really helps your chances in placing a song. So instrumentals are always key, because our editors will be asking for it, because sometimes they do isolate certain parts. As well as if there are any, this usually comes up mostly in hip hop, but it's not exclusive to hip hop, is if there are any, versions of songs that have, any swearing words, to have a clean version available.
Mm. Do you find sometimes you have a song that you really like a lot, but there's no clean version of it?
Yeah, like there was a song, I was just talking with someone recently about this, that everything about the song is great, except every second word is about loving drugs. So that's a hard one to pitch on a show, because obviously, it's a bit of a sensitive thing, but the song melodically is fantastic. The like instrumental, vocal, everything, it's, it would be actually, if it was anything else almost but drugs, this song could probably get placed very easily.
That's funny. Uh, well, I think that's all the questions I have for you. I want to
Okay.
open the chat to things in the chat. Actually, I see one here. Are all splice samples clearable? Do you have anything? Do you want to chime in at all? I don't know if you know about the whole splice controversy or anything like that.
No, if you want to elaborate a little bit more.
Is a platform where people can it's sort of like Spotify for music producers, in that you can go and grab like royalty free
Mm-hmm.
different samples of kicks, everything from kicks to like vocal chops and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all like royalty free and cleared by like paying a monthly fee.
So I will say I'm not saying no supervisors. I'm not, because I can't speak for everybody, but most supervisors I know will not refer to sites like that, because we just cannot risk the chance that something is not fully cleared. That's also why we work, if we need something that is easy clear like that, we'll go to a library, we'll go to a production house, and that's back to the relationship of trust, because we know that they understand what we need and they'll provide it. So I can't speak on that site specifically, but I would be surprised. Actually, I can't think of any supervisor that I know that would want to risk trying to use something like that.
The producer would have to make sure that whatever sample library they're pulling for like their samples, their kicks, their snares, whatever
Mm-hmm.
they're using, that it's fully cleared. And
Basically at the, we will request and anything just in the basic quote requests, there will be some, a clause, indemnification clause, where you are saying, I represent whatever I'm claiming I represent, I actually do. And if you don't, it technically, legally, it's really your problem, but it's not a good look for us with productions. So we will be very certain that, we want to know that what we're getting, the person actually has cleared. And also, I would not pitch anything that you're not sure of, because the worst thing you could do really is pitch something and then it gets actually chosen by production and then we have to come back. That is a good way to, be remembered by a supervisor for the wrong reasons.
And when we talked about earlier with trust and relationships,
Mm-hmm.
the last thing you want to do is damage a relationship by not having your splits right, or
Absolutely.
having something like not being sure that your song is one stop and then saying it's one stop.
Yeah.
Things like this can be
Mm-hmm.
a real drag, right?
Well, it's because, again, legally, we'll make sure that, we'll be fine legally. You could be, on the hook for that, but it is not a good look for us professionally, and that will cause problems with our production. And that's something that you only really have to experience once to then not want to work with that person again. And, supervisors, we are a tight-knit community. We do talk. And we do talk, about bad experiences we've had, essentially because we're looking out for each other. In the same vein, though, we will absolutely talk and promote to each other people that we've had really great experiences with, people who have good music. So it works on both sides. But that is like one of the biggest no-nos you could do.
That totally makes sense, because it's no different in the producer circles.
Yeah.
It's no different. Actually, it's no different in the artist circles too, in terms of like producers they work with, or
Yep.
venues they play at, or things like that. It makes sense, and it just becomes a smaller and smaller circle, I find. So it's just really important to just be really honest in your dealings, and
100%. And again, if you even think there's an issue on a song, period, I would not recommend pitching it, because it's always let us know. Absolutely, let us know above and beyond. But it's almost like a waste of time to even send it to us if we can't even consider using it. Because again, most supervisors, the only time I know, at least for myself, and I feel like a lot of people would probably agree on my side of things, is that if we are going to use a song that may have a clearance issue, it really is maybe because of an ex big name artist, and there's the director absolutely needs a song. I'll dig deep, obviously, because I want to serve my production, but that's really when I'll take the time and the risk to make that happen.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I got somebody from Canada. They might be from Canada. They said a lot of references to Canada in your bio.
Yes,
Is there a personal connection to our northern neighbors?
I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian, but I mean, I've lived here for 5 years. 5 years. I've only worked in supervision here, and me joining forces with Supergroup was the Canadian thing, was, you know, the cherry on the top. But I'm a proud Canadian, essentially.
You spent some time at the SoCan house.
SoCan, I don't, because I live here, but I've been to it many a times. Yeah. I go to their party.
Well, I was asking because they opened one in Culver City, right?
That's our office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they do have a SoCan house in Silver Lake and in Nashville and Paris.
Oh, that's right. These are the local. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
mixing it up. Like, these are the places where they'll literally send artists to go on like kind of writing adventures. Is that correct?
Well, so if you're a SoCan artist, you can actually stay at those. And I don't work for SoCan. I know the folks, but you can actually stay there for free. It's just it gets booked year round, so you have to get in your ask early. But I think it's, you know, a wonderful thing that they offer their members.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Canadians are awesome. Are you looking for songs? So I guess like a question that I'm seeing a few iterations of this. Like, what songs are you looking for? Are you looking for music? I guess there's one question that I did skip over, which is, how do you find the music that you're looking for, and how does your company like take submissions? Do you take submissions, or you have like partners that you kind of go to for that kind of stuff?
So, I mean, everybody's a bit different. You know, again, we're always looking for stuff. We're all music lovers. We're all open to it. We have a little bit of different styles. We definitely accept submissions. But yeah, like I work like, so we get pitched again from people from anywhere, from majors to independents, whatnot, through pitching companies. We obviously get pitched. So we take note of that. Or if I'm working on something very specific and I know that, you know, I'll kind of run through who I think may have that, and I'll reach out to people if I'm looking for stuff. Or sometimes you know, the songs are already essentially very specific by the director of what they want, or it's written in script. So I'll obviously go to whoever those right owners are, but I'll also then get backups just in case it doesn't work for whatever reason. So it really varies. It varies on budget as well, because, you know, when we have certain cues that are probably a bit lower, that one we have X number of people that will go to. I won't go to a major necessarily for that. If I have, you know, an opportunity to maybe bring in an artist to do like an on-camera party scene, then I'm going to definitely most likely go to a major and try to get a big name. So it really varies. Sometimes I've like, Shazam has changed my life for the best, because I don't have to like stop every movie or everything and try to, you know, Google it with the lyrics. So with Shazam, I found stuff. I've found stuff on ads. I've, you know, gone to shows. It really depends. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Would you say there's like some kind of, I see somebody asking about BPMs. Do you notice a correlation between like certain BPMs and usage of songs, or is there like kind of a BPM point that where it reaches kind of like too sluggish
So on that technical side, I personally can't say. What I will say, BPMs are really important depending on projects. So I've worked on films where, like, I'm working on a show right now where there is choreography, and that's where we'll be very specific about the BPMs, from my experience at least. But I don't know technically. What I would just say is that, you know, depending on what you're looking for, if it's something upbeat, you want it to stay upbeat. Even if it's a slower song, there should still be a change in the tempo, even if it's slight, because you don't want it to sound like it's dragging on. But BPMs do, like, I've sent briefs with specific BPM criteria, and that's always been when it has to do with stuff that are, you know, usually choreographed.
It's Thanks for sharing your insights on that. As far as covers go, do you use covers? Are they tougher to clear? What's
Mhm.
your experience with like cover music and how it works
Yeah.
in the
So covers, covers are, I just actually ended up using one because I couldn't get my master that I wanted. And it wasn't even the cover, the master, there was an issue of ownership, so that I didn't have time to wait for the business affairs office to figure that out. And then I could then come to my production. I had a great cover and it was a lot cheaper than dealing with a major. Covers happen, absolutely. I've used them. The only thing is that I don't usually, I pay less attention, and this is me personally, if it's being pitched to me, because the publishing, it really comes into play. So I've had people send me like a great version of Hotline Bling or a great version of something that I'm just like, well, the publishing, like the chances are I'm never, for whatever the publishing is going to clear, they're not going to want that cover version of it. I hate to say it. But I find myself more approaching people if I need to get a cover. So it's always a good, trick to have in your hat, especially because it can also show your versatility. But I wouldn't lead too much with it, just because I won't pay attention to it unless I really need to.
Mm.
It can, though, be a good tool if you do a really cool cover of something, and change the arrangement. Then it's a good way to like get attention, because I love a good cover, but as long as it's well done and everything. But like it's a good way to get my attention potentially. But that's just my opinion, so I can't really say what everyone, if that's the general industry standard.
So for some folks, it might be a better artist move than potentially like something to build a sync library with.
I would say it would be, well, I would say an artist move, it would be great. Like, for example, like if you do something and it, goes on YouTube, because I've actually discovered music on YouTube looking for one video and it suggests something.
Mm.
For a library, it actually is not a bad move either. Because the thing is that, songs where maybe the publishing is going to come in really high, it's a good alternative to have. I think, and I know I seem like I'm probably contradicting myself, I think I would say from a library standpoint, it's good resource to have. As an artist, to come in and just pitch that, you're probably like underselling yourself a little bit, because I don't know if it'll get the same amount of attention. But it is a good thing to have as a library, because there are times we are going to need a good cover. And I've gone to people and say, hey, so the publishing's cleared, the master, I don't have the budget for it, or the director wants this type of style, and I've used covers.
Yeah. So as far as like the clearing side of things, there are some covers that you can clear, and there's some covers that are almost impossible to clear. At least that's
Mm-hmm.
what I have an understanding of.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would be like a good idea for people to do like their due diligence on that and kind of figure out like what
Yeah.
songs are clearable or not, if
Mm-hmm.
they want to be able to have them, sync to picture?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, there are certain artists, and I'm not like throwing, anyone under the bus. It's just a well-known fact. Like, um, Led Zeppelin is a hard one to clear in general. So, but like Elvis songs, for example, Elvis didn't write a lot of his songs.
Hmm.
So where we can't get the master, like you can then maybe, so I would say if you can do your research, I think it helps in general regardless. Because again, the easier that you make our job and the more convenient it is, I always appreciate someone who respects my time, and does their due diligence, because it saves me from having to do that extra step. I will most likely still double check, but again, if I can see that, okay, this person seems to understand and know what they're representing, is giving me, all the information, that just in itself will catch my attention.
That's great. Like going that extra step makes
Mm-hmm.
a difference. Seems to make
Yeah.
sense in terms of like building trust, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
just building a business relationship. So
Yeah, and a lot of actually, like for independent artists especially, a lot of supervisors will comment, you know, if there is someone who just musically their music is great, of course we'll, you know, share that. But one comment that does often get shared, and I know I put emphasis on it if I'm suggesting it to another supervisor, and I've had it the same, you know, on the receiving end, is they understand the business. They do their, you know, they do their homework, they know their stuff. Like that gets said a lot.
hmm. Well, Fabio asked this question.
Yeah.
How have you developed relationships with artists that you trust? What's the best way an artist is really connected with you? One that you love to place? What do they like? What do they do? It sounds like there's a few questions there,
Hmm.
but it's like how do these relationships come into effect? Like how I imagine they're kind of different every time, right?
Yeah, and this one I will be very honest, I don't have really an easy answer to that. In the sense of like a formula. Like I can tell, because really, like I've developed relationships with independent artists based on other supervisor recommendations, based on just me discovering an artist who is unsigned, and I contact them and we start chatting. So that is a little bit, you know, more general. But once you have that connection with the supervisor, someone who's easy to work with is someone who does not take long to respond to things, who we don't have to, you know, go back and forth on, who basically, like I said, hands us like, do you represent this? Yes, here are the writers, here's my PRO. If they can't clear the song completely, they can connect you with the people, because I'll still want to deal with the person directly, but if they can kind of give a heads up to their co-writers, facilitate that connection. The files, when I ask for the files, I don't even sometimes have to ask for them. Metadata is on the files, who basically just hands me everything. That is, you know, that makes goes a long way, who's easy to work with. You know, that, and I've dealt with, you know, a lot of artists that I've dealt with who are indie, really are new to the licensing game, and I understand it's, a lot of it can be very confusing and overwhelming, but we'll still try to make it as easy as possible. um, you know, who are respectful as well of how they contact us, in the sense that, you know, if they get my cell phone number, I don't get texts on Sunday afternoon saying you should listen to my new song, which has happened. um, Things like that. um, the other thing is, and this is a big one, is there again, if most of the time maybe the first licensing opportunity will not be at a high fee, and it's because I probably don't have it in my budget. And you know, I have to make a case to production as well of why I'm justifying the costs. But then to, so if I understand some people, I'm not saying don't take, you know, don't know your worth, but maybe also understand the opportunity. Because I've had some artists who, I had a Grammy award winning producer who was on this track, and he basically wanted to have a relationship and wanted to start working, so he went along with it. And I like that, you know, if you do me a solid, I will remember that. And then when I was able to come back, like I think I licensed a song of theirs for 3,500 all in. And then I had, you know, I kept in touch with them, and I was able to come back and say like, hey, I actually have like $15,000 to give you
Hmm.
on this one. And so we'll remember those type of things. So I would say don't try to push too hard, because most of the time the supervisor's not trying to undercut the fee. We're just not, we don't have more available for that queue, especially for kind of an unknown artist.
Hmm. Totally makes sense. Yeah, it's about building that business
Hmm.
relationship and yeah, just like making sure that every step of the way that you're doing what you can to show up for that. And it's so cool to hear that it's like recognized by music supervisors.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
The next question I got, not sure exactly. I'm not sure I understand the question
Okay.
100%. Maybe you do. If we recorded an album on the card that was done demo scale or limited pressing, will we have to upgrade to master scale with the union for it to be cleared for a licensing opportunity? Does that make sense?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I don't really know. If they're getting into union stuff, I will say like we have like, and the Guild of Music Supervisors had their conference this past weekend, and I actually attended the panel on union fees, because the union fees, whether it's like SAG, AFTRA, or it's AFM, are very confusing to people. I don't know if this is what they're referring to. But you know, like I will say, like, I essentially, whether the union fees affect me or not, the only time they do affect me in terms of how it affects my budget, but in terms of you know, like, I'm not going to not license a song because the union issue is really to do with the relationship between the artist and the union, not as much for me. I don't know if that answers the question though.
Yeah, it sounds like a good attempt at it.
I'm sorry.
Here's another question. Do you request stems on songs when they're submitted, or is it just a thing where when you need them, you ask for the stems?
I don't always ask them. If I can, there are times when I will specifically ask them. Back to my original point of like, give me everything, do it all in one shot so I don't have to ask, is always very appreciated. You know, in that sense, I would say stems, instrumental, clean version. Lyrics are helpful because, you know, to transcribe that is not fun. So if you have them, send them along. And always make sure the metadata. I know you guys probably hear this, but it really is something that I cannot stress enough, because of the amount of music we have. That's something that when I have to do it, it is usually very rare that I will actually follow through and do it. And if I am doing it, it's because I really need to use that song. But I'm doing it very begrudgingly. So.
When you're talking about the metadata, what is the stuff that's like key and you really need in order to use a song? If it's something that's like stuck in a library somewhere and you find it and you're like, what do I need in order to use it?
Well, I mean, you can lose your opportunity because if we don't know where to find it, and like I said, we have so much. So the very basics, which, you know, seem to be obvious, but I will tell you are not, are song title, artist, and, you know, where it's coming from. So taking it a step further is, if you are going to put all that, I would suggest putting the writers' names, the PROs of the writers, who owns the master, who owns the publishing, if you own parts of it, whatever your percentage on the song, you know, share it, and your contact information. The contact information is actually extremely helpful. And I even noticed that when majors or indies send it to me, because it's just like, okay, great, I know this person pitched it, done.
By the way, this is all information that we require of any music that we pitch.
Great.
Totally preaching to the choir. This is it's just so helpful to hear that this is what you actually need. And,
absolutely.
And it totally makes sense too. Like, why not take the time to fill out like the at least like the title of the song, the artist name, and then some way of contacting at a minimum. It totally makes sense.
The year also helps, like the year that it was recorded. That's not necessary per se, but again, in this circumstance, this is all information that may not seem obvious to you guys, but can make the world of a difference, and can also, when we're moving fast on stuff, if like I have to look, my director or producer, whatever, may like a song, and obviously I'm going to serve them, that is my job, but like the time it may take for me to connect the dots of who the song belongs to could mean a missed opportunity for that song.
That totally makes sense. I got probably enough time, if it's okay for you. You've been, sure. I just want to say you've been so generous with your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
I so appreciate it. I'm sure everybody in the group here really appreciates it. I got time to ask a couple more questions here. So if that's
cool. Sure. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I do have a hard out, but I do have a bit of time still. So it's good. Yeah.
We'll close this out in the next 5 minutes. Is that cool?
That's okay. I'd say you can, you have like 10 minutes if you want.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
So look, if that's the case, we're just going to throw as many questions as we can
go
at
for it. Yeah.
you. Do you use disco? What's your opinion on disco?
Okay, so I do not work for disco. I will say this. It is personally, I was actually one of their probably first users, I think, in LA. Personally, for me, it is my preferred method, simply because it just saves me. Like, I know, yeah, supervisors, we want things easy essentially, but it just saves me so much time. It spares my inbox a lot of space. And yeah, like it's really been a game changer for me. So like, it doesn't have to be on disco. I will say, and I've said this many times, I do happen to listen to it probably quicker on disco, just because it requires less effort for me to like download, do all this. So disco's great. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's definitely what Catch the Moon uses.
Mm-hmm.
Our library. It's certainly like I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say it's like what everybody uses. Certainly not what everybody uses, but
Yeah.
it's got a lot of great features, and
Mm-hmm.
it's worth taking a shot at.
Absolutely. Like I will say, like I said, it's a game changer. I know a lot of supervisors love it. There are a lot of supervisors who just haven't, for whatever reason, because again, like it is, I do understand whether it's a licensor or a supervisor to kind of adjust how their music library works is a lot, especially if they've been doing it for a long time and there's a lot to ingest. But for me to receive disco files, I will get around to listening to it quicker, simply just because it's easier for me to do that.
It's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Literally all you do is you just press play.
Absolutely.
You don't have to
Yeah.
leave the site that you're always on. Anyways, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, and I just don't have to take the time, that step to download. And because again, we have so much stuff coming in that, I mean, I still obviously back up my computer and everything, but I don't have to do it as frequently anymore.
That makes sense. Hey, got another one for you.
Yeah.
How many music soups team up for massive productions? Is there an executive music supervisor role? How does that function? Or is there one supervisor who kind of takes charge and then everybody kind of helps out with it?
So you mean just generally speaking, or
It
with
sounds like you're talking about like if there's like a massive project where it's like all hands on deck kind of situation.
So, I mean, it really varies on the project. Like there are some supervisors, I've teamed up with supervisors before because I can do full licensing. They're not as versed into it. I've had others that just time wise and resource wise, there's really no formula. The only thing, so it really, yeah. So all that being said, it really depends. Because some supervisors, especially freelance supervisors, are essentially a one person, maybe two person team. And that can be a lot to do, big projects on. But when you do get hired by a studio, by a network, there will be a team. So you may get hired on as a supervisor, but there will be a music exec who essentially you have to, for better, essentially report to. They will oversee, make sure that things are running accordingly. But you're still essentially, running production on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to have somebody running point, right?
Yeah. So a lot of studios and networks will have in-house teams, and those in-house teams will work on projects, but they will also work with supervisors brought on to, for whatever is under that department.
Well, sweet. I got another question for you.
Yeah.
When you take, actually, this is a question I want to make sure to ask before. So I know you said that you take submissions. What's your process like? Is there people just submit stuff through your website? Like
our website, I'd have to double check. I do believe it does receive submissions. And yeah, it really kind of depends. Again, everybody's a little bit different. I even like even just this past weekend at the conference, I will say, like, I walked into the room, was so happy to see many people, but I also realized how many people I had to get back to. And a lot of it's just because I don't have the time to listen to a lot of it as it's coming in. So You can send it. My disclaimer is, may take a minute for it to be, acknowledged or recognized. But it really, if you get into our mail, inbox or whatever system, we will at some point hear it.
Yeah. And that's great to know. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
When you take downloads, what format? This is like format war, does it really matter AIFF versus WAV?
Right.
Do you care?
I always prefer, I like to have the option of both. And this is like, so if you are going to send a link, don't send one that expires, anything that requires a login. And SoundCloud is not great if you can't download it. So when I do require, I like to have the access to both. On the first pass, I personally, if I am going to download, I will just do MP3s, and that's simply just on space. The reason why I'd like to have the option is because there will be a time with my production in the delivery phase where we are going to need WAV files. Now, WAV files, I'm sure everybody kind of knows this, the metadata doesn't stay on WAV files. So just sending WAV files is not really as effective in that sense. But the only time I will then need WAV files is when we're delivering.
Totally makes sense. Gotta have the high quality version along with the version that you can just listen to and save hard drive space with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Great question too. Do you take publish? Oh, so this is like in terms of like I've seen a few questions here in the thread about just kind of like the business aspects of the way that the company that you work for works with artists. Like, obviously, you don't have to get into any type of confidential info here.
Sure.
Just whatever you feel comfortable sharing about, just like kind of your company's attitude towards like in terms of like do you take publishing? Are you just repping master? Like what?
Oh, we don't, we're music supervisors, so we do not, we don't have a publishing company. We don't have a label entity or a publishing entity. We're simply supervisors licensing music. If ever we do stuff on spec, it's either, again, we're licensing it, or production will own it, but we don't work in any other capacity. And I will say, there are certain supervision companies that do have like a publishing arm or do have that. It doesn't mean if they're licensing their music that it's automatically taking a cut. I can't say I really know anyone who does that way. I think, again, as much as they may have publishing or label entities, they keep it separate from what they license.
Yeah, that certainly sounds like the type of answer that I'd expect from like a music supervisor.
I would say if someone is, approaching you to take a cut to I would, again, if it's maybe like an indie film and the person, it's a score, something like that, but I would not say for straight up licensing. My advice would be to just simply license and not give away any of those rights.
Seems like solid advice to me. If you're maybe one more question, got time?
Sure. I have I can do, like I said, maybe 3 minutes.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Let's do at least one more. Let's see. Sorry, there's so many questions. There was a question that was asked a little earlier that I wanted to ask. If you're looking for a specific type of songs, because I think this is like a really good question, just kind of like your general process when you're looking for stuff. If you're looking for a specific type of song for a project, how many people, production companies do you send out to request to submit like a, looking for a song that's like kind of an alt to this or something like that? How do you go about like reaching out to your trusted people?
Right.
Network.
So again, it will vary because sometimes it's a genre thing. Sometimes it's down to the person that works at that company just really understands, like, there is an art form to pitching music. So sometimes it really comes down to somebody that just may not have that in most of their catalog, but they just know how to pitch music. So they'll probably send me something that I'll be pleasantly surprised with or whatnot. Sometimes it's down to budget. The more options, the better. But I will probably say I will try to probably reach out to at least 10 people, at least, when I say 10 people, based on what, and that's per queue, days based on what I need. So sometimes if I need, like I have several queues that need, you know, female empowerment, upbeat and stuff like that, then, you know, I pool bigger things. But the considerations I will take will be, I want things from different price points. I want recognition, you know, and it will sometimes be, like I said, the individual who reps that down to just, you know, this company has a massive catalog and they should. So you try to get as many options as possible, but I would say probably 10 per brief, so to speak.
So that gives you like a good canvas, a good network,
Mm-hmm.
a good amount of songs to kind of filter through and give you some new ideas, perhaps.
Yeah, and when I say like, so I say 10 minimally. There are times it's been more. While that's happening, I will also then go through my inbox of what I've received. So like one of my favorite, you know, placements was something that I placed in July on a pitch that I received, like a blast, you know, I received in, I think it was like December of the year before. So I will still go through things, see what, you know, pops out. Then I'll go through my files. So there are several different steps. So even though maybe it doesn't, like I'm only sending it to maybe 25 people, I will probably then reach out to people I hadn't thought about based on what's in my inbox or in my library, or circle back to the people and be like, hey, you had sent me this. I really like this. Can you give me other stuff of this flavor? And it may, you know, kind of skew the direction of what I initially had put in my brief.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say, we'll call it a day here. I just want to, you've been like
Okay.
so generous. Thank you so much for your
Oh,
time.
it's my pleasure. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So helpful to everybody to get the perspective of somebody who's doing it every day. So thanks so
Great.
much
Well,
for your help, and yeah, hopefully we'll have
thank
you
you.
back sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night, guys.
Everybody for tuning in, and I'll post a little recap on this, I'm sure. So have everybody
Great.
good night, good morning, wherever you're coming from. All right.
Great. Thank you. Bye bye.